our very special and regular guest, Scarlett Trillia. How are you today on this Mars Tuesday, Scarlett?
Mars Tuesday. Am I a guest if I'm here all the time, or am
Yes,
I? Okay, just checking.
you're a special guest.
What's it called? I'll have to think about the joke I just wanted to make. Like the resident guest at this point.
hmm
Yeah.
hmm
Uh-huh. It's like Fish at the not Fish actually isn't a good example. It's like one of those artists that is later in their career and they do a residency in Las Vegas.
That's right. I was just thinking about that.
That's pretty much what's going on here. Yeah, 5 nights a week. You
That's
can
right.
find
Special
Scarlett's.
guest, 5 nights a week.
Yeah,
Well, I
okay.
got an email this morning. It's very exciting, and I'd
Okay.
like to share it with you. It's from one of our softwares, and it said, "You've got fan mail."
Oh.
So I opened it up. Would you
Uh-huh.
like me to read what it says?
Please read the fan mail. Oh, I cannot wait.
It says, "Catching up on Third Eye Roll. Really fun learning with humor and realism. Episode 5 about entering the yoga trip and not being able to go back was really, really fun. Two exclamation points. Thanks, exclamation point. Prayer hands emoji. Brian."
Brian! Brian? We're going to dedicate this episode to Brian.
Yes, we are. Oh, and then it's from Fort Bragg, California. That's it. That's the email.
Okay. I,
I want to share
fan,
something about Brian right here that I think is okay to share on the podcast.
okay.
Oddly, though Brian has hung out with us in our Sangha for many, many years, Brian does not have a spiritual name.
Oh.
He has never been at an occurrence where we have been offering the spiritual names. And so it's very odd that Brian does not have a spiritual name, unlike some more recent members of the hashtag not a cult Sangha who do have spiritual names. It's just how it
Well,
is.
I think say no more on this topic because it shall remain elusive episode to episode. We'll just hype it up and then completely drop
Uh
it
huh.
from the conversation. But stay tuned, folks. The mystery solver. So I was thinking prior to recording this, I'm of a generation that grew up late at night in my little bedroom with plugged into the wall stereo that had a CD drive and a
Yes.
tape player and AM
Yeah.
FM radio, listening to Loveline with my
Yes.
head close to the speaker so I wouldn't wake anybody up. Live radio, people calling in, people
Yes.
responding to fan mail, giving advice. And it was like a nationwide
Mm-hmm.
kind of unified thing that we used to do. Radio is very powerful,
Mm-hmm.
and I I kind of am just I'm just every time I come on the podcast, I just pretend that I'm on a FM radio is
Yeah,
how I just feel.
absolutely. And do you remember? I don't know. Remember when there'd be those shows on the radio, and then you'd record songs onto cassette tape from the
Yeah.
radio. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had to pay attention and stop and start.
Yep.
And we used to call in and like win
Oh
tickets,
yeah. Oh, for
questions.
sure.
Things still exist. However, the podcast loses some of that real time. And maybe what we should do is let people know when we're recording and give them a number to text, or they can
Well,
reach
we're
out to us.
also live streaming to YouTube and Facebook at the same time as we're recording. I didn't know if you knew that.
Oh,
Oh
I had
yeah.
no idea. Okay,
Uh-huh.
great.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah,
I
yeah.
hope someone is watching this like she's an idiot.
But thank you so much to Brian for writing in. We appreciate you. Words of affirmations right at your face.
We love fan mail. Thank you, everyone. Strangers, don't be shy. This is how you join a sangha. You just
That's right.
participate in. That's right.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
can see us. We're live streaming right now, right here. It's happening.
okay, if anyone is participating in this live stream, gigantic kudos to you
Hmm.
for keeping the dream alive.
That's right.
This is Love Line. We can play Germany or Florida on the Love Line. You remember that game? Oh my gosh, time goes by. Okay, so we're going to talk about yoga today in the
Mm.
greatest sense of the word. Don't you think?
And yeah, I think we are. And, I was thinking we can relate this back to the Jyotish a bit if we want to. We also don't have to. But we decided today to not talk specifically about the transits or what's happening in the sky, but to talk about the great love story and the great mythic concepts of Shiva and Shakti. One of the most used cosmic cliches in the spiritual Instaverse. And so, Instaverse,
But can I not make the argument that yoga, meaning union, is Shiva and Shakti?
Yes.
Is the meeting
You
of
don't even
them.
need to make the argument.
It's not an argument, is a fact. Can I state the fact?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And this is what we mean when we say that we are practitioners of yoga. And I just feel like I cannot reiterate that enough in the West. Because there's been some misconceptions about how to use that word in proper context. Anyway, but let's start. Should we start with myth telling today?
Ooh, let's start with myth telling. I love that idea.
But you were going to say something else that was probably not a myth, and I also want to make sure to hear that.
Let's start with a myth.
Okay, let's start with myth.
Once upon a time, long, long ago, and far, far away, simultaneously right here and right now, inside of each of us, Shiva, who is the great god of yoga and the first yogi in many ways, who is a perfect conundrum, he was practicing the great art of yoga up on Mount Kailash, deep in meditation, non-dual meditation, and his counterpart, Shakti, Parvati, she has many names. She wanted to know the secrets of this great practice of union. And so Shiva said, okay, I'll teach you. And so in order to teach her the highest secrets of yoga, he builds her a palace under the water. And together they go to this palace underwater, and together they practice the secrets of tantric yoga union for thousands and thousands of years. And actually, these teachings that Shiva gives to Shakti and then Shakti gives back to Shiva are recorded in a very beautiful text called Vijnana Bhairava Tantra. And we have this text and we have its translations. There's a few translations of this text. There's one that was translated into English called the Radiance Sutra. And the translation from the Sanskrit isn't that great, but it's so beautiful. So read it anyhow, because it captures the spirit of the text. And so they are in their rapturous union for thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of years, practicing their union and their merging. And there happens to be this fellow, Matsyendrasen, whose name means, Matsya means fish, Andra means king. And Matsyendrasen, the king of the fishes, either he's half fish or he lives inside a fish. And actually, those of you who are practitioners of modern postural yoga might recognize the posture Matsyendrasen. Matsyendrasen is a twisting posture. It's found in Ashtanga yoga, it's found in Hatha yoga, it's found in many places. And actually, this posture, both Matsyendrasen, the character, and the posture itself, Matsyendrasana, Matsyendra is the name of the fellow, because that means king of fishes. Matsyendrasana would be the name of the posture. Anyhow, both the fellow himself, Matsyendra, and Matsyendrasana, the posture, are both mentioned in the text Hatha Yoga Pradipika by Master Swatmaraman, this 14th century text that's actually the text that gives us the first text on postural yoga, among other things. And Master Swatmaraman in Hatha Yoga Pradipika lists Matsyendra as the first teacher in this lineage of yoga, of tantric yoga. And he lists his posture, this twisting posture, as a hammer that will crush any disease, including leprosy. So that's helpful. And then including leprosy.
Yeah.
Yeah, specifically. And you know, the reason why I think is because it's this deep twist that twists the cerebral spinal fluid. Um, at any rate, Matsyendrasen, either half man, half fish, or person living inside of a fish, much like Jonah inside the whale, he comes swimming along underwater and he finds this deep underwater secret palace where Shiva and Shakti are in rapturous union, practicing the arts of tantric yoga, and he spies on them. And he listens to the conversation and he learns all of the secrets, the top secrets of yoga. And Shiva notices a disturbance in the force field, and he notices that Matsyendrasen, this peeping Tom, is spying on Shiva and Shakti. And so this makes Shiva very upset. And so he begins to open his third eye that would decimate Matsyendra. And Shakti stops him and says, you know, don't decimate this poor fellow. And so Shiva says, okay, it's fine. The teachings are in the world now. And then Matsyendrasen takes the secrets of yoga and decimates and offers them to all of the people in all the lands. And that's the root of where yoga comes into the world. So that's the myth.
Very interesting myth. Maybe we should reveal some of the secrets, which I think we could do simply by describing the nature of Shiva and of Shakti and what
Exactly.
occurs when they enter into union, and how we can experience this metaphorically in different aspects of both our internal and external life.
Exactly, because you know, we've seen like the you've probably seen the memes that you know that like they're cosmic twin flames or Shiva and Shakti, and that they're you know like these tropes about Shiva being stillness and Shakti being chaos, and the wild feminine and the you know the still masculine. But these are cute and they aren't actually what this is about at all.
That is not what it's about at all. However, in some sense, they are. Sometimes when we talk about union, we're talking about the union or balancing or harmonizing of dynamic opposites.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're talking about the union between like the big self and the little self, or between individuated consciousness and divine consciousness. I do think that it's worth mentioning that in these traditions we consider Shiva, who is the representative of the divine masculine, to be pure consciousness,
That's right.
and we consider Shakti to be the divine feminine, which is pure energy. So consciousness and energy.
Consciousness
And
and bliss, consciousness and energy.
oh, consciousness and energy. And Shakti is responsible for all manifestation, in the sense that a tree a grass, a field of grass, an animal walking, a human running, a storm raging. This is Shakti's energy. But we would have no way of naming or experiencing or witnessing Shakti, her energy in motion, without Shiva's consciousness.
Correct. Exactly right.
There's another story. I don't know much myth telling. We really taking everyone on a unique journey today. There's another story that you have told to me many times that I wonder if we should reflect on, which is to do with these. And we're talking about them as if they are characters.
Hmm.
It's that is a way of us having language access to discuss topics that are beyond the scope of our senses and beyond like the limits of our language in some sense. So we give them form so that we can hold them, but they're much greater than this. But one explanation for this manifestation of reality, this human plane in which we experience great suffering, admittedly, obviously, take a look around. And it is not the manifestation of the union, but actually the occurrence of the grief of the separation from union. That is like, it's actually Shakti's scream at the beginning
Scream.
of separation
Hmm.
after
Hmm.
knowing union. And that's what gives us this manifestation. Higher planes are when that union continues to exist. And I don't know if you would like to tell that back in a more
Yeah, and I actually have a even another myth that I
yeah.
want to tell about Shiva Shakti. I'm gonna one second. I'm gonna edit this out a little bit, and I can do that in the software. Just Veil is unloading the dishwasher, so I'm getting a little bit of background noise, but they are going to leave soon. So I want to
I
make sure that
noticed.
we don't. Yeah,
I
yeah, I
noticed.
want to make
Do
sure.
you want to do you want to hang out for 1 second and we
Yeah,
can?
we're gonna hang out for a second until the crashing is stopped, and then I can edit it out in the software. Um, yeah, I think we're doing great. Oh yeah, we're live streaming also, so that's good. Let's give ourselves some congratulations mid pause. If anybody's out there in live stream land, we'd love to take your questions or comments. I'm going to check our live stream feed in our little
Okay.
pause here. Um, oh yeah, we're doing great. Oh yeah, we're doing great. Okay, excellent. Okay. Um, all right. They should be finishing up here momentarily and leaving to go do their class, so that'll be exciting. Um, all right. Yeah, I think the banging is finished. Okay, so we will continue on now with our journey. Okay, so starting. Nope, they're still banging. Because see, they have to go back and like check the feed of something, so they're only doing like one dish at a time. Vale, unload the dishwasher because I need to finish live streaming, and you're going back and forth and only doing one piece at a time. Shiva, Shakti.
Hang on. Shiva.
Yep. Shakti.
Shiva.
Shiva. Shakti.
Shakti.
Shiva.
Shiva.
Shiva. Shakti.
So let me just spitball a little bit while we're getting back to our myth. When we talk about union of opposites, there's a dishwasher is going. So there, as
We're just gonna have to wait a minute. Or I can switch actually I can't even switch my microphone to make it any better. Nope.
no.
God. No, it won't. Shiva, Shakti, Shiva, Shakti, Shiva.
Also, can we
Shakti.
just do like Shiva's mudra? You can't quite see my lap, but
Linga Mudra. Yes, we can.
Shiva lingam. So what we are doing, so as embodied practitioners, we have countless actions, we call them Kriya, that we can use to give ourselves an experience of where we have opposites and how we can work toward harmonizing or unionizing or balancing them, or putting ourselves into a state in which there is no separation between them. This noise is so funny. I don't even know what to say right now.
But that was really interesting. I loved it so much. They're going to leave it here in about like 25 seconds.
Okay.
Oh my God.
25
Yeah.
seconds.
Apparently, I cannot do our podcast at my house in the morning. It does not work well. Or
It's
else
fine.
we just get the background noise of this. So I'm going to pick up our podcast about right here. So we were talking about myths, and we were talking about another myth that you were interested in me sharing, which I'll do. And then I really like this explanation of Kriya that you just gave. And so I'm wondering if you would give that again, because we're talking about Shiva Shakti and we're talking about Kriya, which is an often misunderstood aspect of yoga. It doesn't come into some pathways of postural yoga, and then certain schools and lineages use a great deal of Kriya. And it seems that those who are more rooted in this is a very vast generalization, because all forms of postural yoga are to some degree rooted in Tantra and Tantric teachings. But it seems those that are closer to these lineages of so called Tantra will utilize more Kriya. So, what were you saying about Kriya?
What I was saying about Kriya, and Kriya is means action. Is there another a definition for that term, or is that the working
Well,
English
that's a
word?
working definition. Yeah.
Well, that's and I mean, whenever we say we're translating something, we're interpreting it into the best use of our language in the moment. When we talk about Kriya in the practice of yoga, what we are exploring are actions that help us experience, let's call it these binary opposites, and then have a feeling of what it means to move between them. And it's like a pendulum, right? And we also talk about this when we're explaining the state of meditation that we enter into. So if you're using action to move, let's say from, we were just kind of joking around in our little break here, from right Shiva to left Shakti and back and forth, right, left, right, left, right, left, you're passing through that middle ground, and that is your embodied experience of bliss union, which we cannot actually hold that, but we can give ourselves pathways to experiencing it maybe more and more frequently or with longer duration. And this is part of the pathway of yoga, which yoga also means union, right? So we take this path toward extending the space and time in which we can relate to that divine experience of being in union with ourselves. I don't know how well I explained it this time around, but Kriya as action is very nice. Another great example for practitioners, and we're talking about kind of twisting. Ooh, Matsya Andreasen again, twisting right,
Right.
twisting left, right,
Mhm.
twist right, twist
Mhm.
left. Shiva, Shakti, and it goes so fast as it Shakti, Shiva, Shakti, Shiva, and then that brings you into this vibrational state of balance, right? Another way of doing this would be with the breath. So our right nostril is connected to one of the right side energy channels, and we haven't. I don't know if we have space on this podcast to go into a whole conversation about our subtle energetic bodies in the chakra system, but
At
just
some
know that
point, we
at some
will.
point, this is also on the menu. This is like a really weird buffet, but there's but we have something that is commonly referred to as alternate nostril breathing. This is a practice of pranayam, which is a practice of working with your energy, nadi shodhana. And what we're doing is we're accessing one nadi on the right, the other nadi on the left, not to go left, right, but to unwind the constriction that they are forming around our central channel, which is the vehicle for moving bliss union, divine union in and out of our own bodies, right? So Shiva and Shakti, this is all to say, Shiva and Shakti exist simultaneously all the time inside of us. And
What a
we,
beautiful explanation of Kriya.
oh,
That was really nice.
I'm a really good teacher. I got this great teacher. You should meet her sometime. But this is what these things are for. This is not an exercise class. There's this crazy misconception in the West that you go to do your yoga workout. No, you are going to have a transcendental experience of divine union inside yourself for 60 minutes on a little mat in front of other people. It costs $20 and you have to buy a special outfit. It's just such a weird time in history.
It's such a weird time in history. It's like, like the West, we take the thing that is like supposed to be the most chill and we turn it into like workout bunnies with like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, but going back, not everyone, and in the past, very few people had access to the opportunity to practice Kriya or Kriya Yoga or any yoga, right? Very few, this is an exclusive and weird thing to do. It is becoming mainstream just in time because we really need this on Earth right now. Um, but even still, it's a relatively rare thing to get to experience, especially with an initiated teacher or guide. And so we have these stories that allow us to listen at a metaphorical level to a description of the experience that we are also trying to cultivate inside ourselves. And that is why we have myth. And that's why we use myth on this podcast, because we're participating right now in an oral tradition and we're not practicing Kriya Yoga together over the airwaves.
Correct. So here's a little myth that I haven't told you for a while, and it's not the Shakti scream myth, which I think we'll have at the end of our time together today. But so Kali, who is one form of Shakti, the goddess of this divine feminine, she has just annihilated a whole bunch of demons as she has done. And so she's wild and dark and dripping with blood. And she's completely out of control because so much energy has moved and she starts dancing across the cosmos and her power is too much. Destruction becomes chaos. And even the gods are like, oh my God, she's not going to stop. She's just like in battle rage. And so Shiva, this divine masculine, if we like these terms, feminine and masculine, and they are problematic. We're not talking about a gender binary, and we're not trying to reinforce or reinstate a gender binary that is linked to genitalia or sexuality. We're talking about principles, and this is where words get so hard. We're talking about creation and destruction. We're talking about stillness and chaos. We're talking about inhalation and exhalation. And so these are we're talking about sun and moon. These are actual factors in our world. And masculine and feminine are kind of problematically layered onto these ideas of opposite. So anyhow,
I'd like to throw a few more opposites in there because that was such a
thank you.
So other terms people might be familiar with are yang and yin, like a yin.
Yes, thank you.
This is the same principle coming from different tradition. Logic and intuition is another. Hot and cold.
Thank you.
Wet
and dry. Wet and dry.
Light and dark, day and night. Says moon. Sometimes, and this is another story we can tell. This is actually not, there's myth, but there's also astronomical fact, astrophysical facts that relate to this. The reason why we can have an eclipse, for example, a relationship between a sun and a moon, which are so different in size, has to do with a divine ratio, which gives us an opportunity to witness union in our own sky above us. Infrequently, but regularly, we get to see the sun and the moon in union, and we see it actually through shadow, which is really interesting. And and this gets us back to Rahu Ketu, gets us back into the charts. But really what we're saying is that this is something that is so fundamental to our existence that it is occurring around us all the time, and it is without binary opposites like dark and light, we would have no relative understanding or experience of being in our manifest reality.
Exactly, right? And so uh, we're dealing with words and we're dealing with language and it's imperfect. So we're talking about these opposites, and so Kali Shakti is just gone wild and gone completely. She's just pure energy, and it's pure energy. Pure energy is destructive or can be destructive. This is the force of an atom bomb. That is energy, right? And we are in many ways talking about something that's atom, like we're talking about the atoms, right? We're talking about the smallest and the largest, the microcosm and the macrocosm and the macrocosm and the microcosm. So Shiva does something quite radical. He lies down in her path. And when Kali steps upon his body, she suddenly realizes, I am dancing on my beloved. And you can see these images of Shakti dancing on Shiva. Or sometimes in some of her forms, she's dancing on a couple in union. It's very beautiful. Like Chinnamasta dances on a couple in union. Kurukula dances on a couple in union. And she sticks out her tongue in shock because she's so shocked that she's trampling on the body of her beloved. And at that moment, the chaos stills and she returns to awareness and she returns to love. So it's about awakening in that moment where she is reminded. He doesn't stop her, he reminds her. And in that moment, energy reintegrates into consciousness, right? Because she is energy and he is consciousness. And so this is another myth of Shiva Shakti that comes to mind at this time. I also want to talk just a little bit about this concept of yoga in Vedic astrology because it's part of the 5 limbs of every day, which are called the Pachanga. The Pachanga are the 5 aspects of every day of the year. And yoga, it's very beautiful. It's a mathematical combination that's based on the sum of the longitudes of the sun and the moon at any given time. So we have Shakti the moon and Shiva the sun. And we have the yoga that is the sun's degree plus the moon's degree. And then we divide the result by 13.2, which is one nakshatra. And you get one of 27 yogas. And so this is the relationship of solar consciousness and lunar body somatic awareness. This is consciousness and embodiment. And the yoga tells us the overall flavor of the harmony or disharmony of the sun moon relationship in a various day. And these there are 27 yogas, but they fall into these different categories. There are Shubha yogas, those are very auspicious yogas. Ashubha yogas, those ones are inauspicious. And then there are mixed yogas, which are neutral. And there are 27 different, and there are these beautiful categories of yogas. And they're good for different purposes. And then they integrate with the specific nakshatra, the specific tithi of every day to give every day a different flavor. So I just wanted to throw that out to bring in the Jyotish.
I like that. And it also made me think, and I think we'll maybe during Saturn's retrograde, we can have a whole podcast on this topic. Saturn is a result of not quite a union between the sun and the moon, but a deception of a union between the sun and the moon. I'm just going
Yes,
to foreshadow that, and it gives Saturn its character because
correct.
it's actually not divine union, but it's all right. Well, we'll have to come back to that one. But it was funny because we were like, oh, let's take a break from Jyotish and talk about uh, union principles because this is so fundamental to everything that we're doing. It is
Mhm.
if there's an end goal, this is the one. And
Mm.
yet, because everything is everything in union, we
Yes.
could tell this whole story actually again from the perspective of the Jyotish or from the charts. We could tell it from the perspective of Ayurveda. We could tell it from the perspective of
Mm.
yoga.
Hmm.
And like that in a way is also a form of union, just seeing everything in every context too. This is probably a little ethereal level of a podcast for the average listener, but um, that's kind of the point. You're not necessarily supposed to understand this so much as embody your understanding, and in the moment that you are having a conscious somatic experience, you are having
Mm.
a taste of it. And that's why we do
Mhm.
all these practices. And that's why
Mm.
we tell all these stories. Um, that being said,
Mm.
go ahead.
That being said, go ahead. Okay.
I was gonna
I
say,
also wanted to. I also wanted to relate the name of Kali, one of the manifestations of Shakti, to the unmediated force of time, Kala, destruction and transformation. And time is not really sexy. It is terrifying. Hurricane, childbirth, ego death, and the stop of time. This is what we're all, we can guarantee one thing: we're all going to die. And then there is
without a,
consciousness. What?
I said without a single doubt. Get
Without a
used to it, people.
single doubt, right?
Guaranteed. It is guaranteed. You can rely on it. Death is
Even the
so
enlightened ones, even the enlightened ones die.
reliable.
Maybe their experience of death is different than someone else's. Maybe they return back immediately to this plane to help all sentient beings. We don't know, but we will go through that transformation that is that gateway or that portal that is Kali's mouth we will, which is also a vagina. Sorry, I don't mean to offend anyone. Kali's mouth has a tongue that drips out and is dripping with blood. This is the divine feminine. And so that is what I want to say about that. We have one new message. I'm opening the chat. I'm the only one watching, says Big. I don't know who Big is, but thank you for watching.
Thank you, Big. Oh, we are so happy to have you here live. See, my dreams of being on the radio are coming true.
Thank you. Oh, on YouTube. Somebody is
Yes,
watching. Thank
someone is
you.
watching. All right.
Yeah,
That
that's
is
like
so.
one more than we had last week. And we have fan mail? Wow.
Wow. This is amazing.
My mind is blown here that
What's
anyone listens to us, but people really like us.
Well, the thing is that this isn't for everyone, and yet this is the most unifying, to use that word again,
Yeah.
conversation that you could be having on Earth right now.
Mm,
Because it is timeless
mm,
and it is infinite,
mm.
and it is also fundamentally a part of the human experience.
Yeah.
And again, we'll chat more about Saturn, but we've alluded to the fact in past podcasts that we are in for an especially interesting phase of collective spiritual development right
Yes.
now. And I I don't think you spend as much time studying these things as we have done if it is not part of your assignment to make sure that other people also get to learn this. I also am saying that because if you are newly listening, or if you are a fairly new student to any of these practices or traditions, it's not about achievement, it's basically about holding space and letting this flow through you. And it is especially about allowing yourself to be present, to have these experiences and witness this in your own microcosm.
Correct. And it is in fact part of our lineage that we hold specific resonances, and I don't like the term, it's very fashionable, but codes, if you will, and we don't have thousands and thousands of people listening to us, because these are very rarefied, very precious jewels.
Very precious jewels. It is not, these traditions were never intended for the masses. And what's different now is that who gets to experience guided union, because anybody and everybody has access to this, whether you know the terms or you know the practices or not. It happens constantly.
It's biological. It is inside of every single Homo sapien. And we don't mean to in any ways erase the cultural roots and religious roots of these practices and pioneers that came before. And it's also universal-ish. We find this symbolism, we find these practices cross-culture and cross-place because they are in fact hardwired into our nervous system, into our endocrine system, and into our biology.
Literally. And they are present in our sky above all of us.
Correct. Right? Everybody's got the sun and everybody's got the moon. If you are on this planet Earth, you are not separate from the cycles of the sun and the moon. Period. That is the planet that we are living on.
Yeah. And we are in a very interesting time in history. It is safe to say that in the thousands of years that these conversations have been taking place, never has it been so possible for a global community to once again come into union through these pathways that we now have access to, and for quote unquote any person to be able to participate in this learned tradition. And I say any person with my fingers making little quotes because that is a whole separate conversation about fate and free will.
Right.
If you found your way here, it may or may not.
Which actually, is a conversation that always kind of needs to be had when we're talking about astrology. It's kind of a really important conversation about how much is free will and how much is fated. And one thing that I like to think about with this conversation about free will and fate is because is that you are born into your body, as far as I can tell, and I am born into my body, as far as I can tell, and you have your experience of your childhood, etc., and I have mine, and as far as I can tell, that is your fate, to be in that body, and that it is my fate to be in this body, and that constrains our free will. I can't body jump permanently yet.
Permanently yet. Although we've towed on the edges of the tide of metaphysical.
We have, and and Dalai Lama, in part politically, because of the Chinese government, etc., is going to confer his incarnation and wisdom on Karmapa Lama instead of having an incarnate child next time around. He's going to just transfer his consciousness into another being, because the fear is that the Chinese government will select a child who is not actually the incarnation of Dalai Lama for their own political purposes. So we are seeing transfer of consciousness, at least on a global on a global stage, in that exchange that's going to come up soon, most likely. So we are seeing these things
We
happening.
are. And I would say it's probably safe to argue that these things are not that weird. They're just not that familiar to recent history. And
Correct.
yeah, oh, go ahead.
I mean, we lived, it's very beautiful if you, when you read the mythology and you read the text and you read about other times and places, because the fantastical was absolutely part of the everyday world and life. It's so beautiful. There's like monsters and there's fairies and there's all these different critters that people encounter, and we don't necessarily have those experiences in that same way. The other side was very close by in more ancient times.
And going back to my favorite zeitgeist, I love social media because it's it's the collective consciousness demonstrating that we are in union as a
Yes.
species.
Yes.
Because you say a thing and then you go on there. It's not just your algorithm, it's not just your microphone
Yeah.
recording you. It's the fact that we are of one consciousness.
Yes.
And why am I bringing up what oh, well, something I've been seeing trending
Mm,
in recent years that I didn't used to see so often in the kind of public discourse is this
mm.
idea of the veil being thin, which
Yes, that's right.
implies that the veil got thick for a period of time and that
Hmm.
we were our attention and our energy,
Hmm.
our consciousness and our energy
Hmm.
were diverted to the material plane in
Hmm.
especially in the West. Buy this, eat this, watch this, do this,
Hmm.
achieve that, do this job, et cetera, to the extent that that became our identity and our purpose, and not things that we have to do to stay alive in these bodies while we dedicate as much of our energy as we can to a higher purpose. And I think as the veil thins, we are not advancing so much as returning, or is it the same thing? It's my favorite concept of let's do a 180 and step forward, right?
Yeah.
It's like, are we going forward or backward? It doesn't matter because time is kind of irrelevant. But I think as a collective, we are, maybe we can say we're reawakening. It all sounds so cheesy in English.
I know,
But
doesn't it? It
it
sounds
really does.
really
It's so
trite or something.
that's why we do the practices and we don't just talk about it, but we embody it. And just to be really clear, I think this is a good way of understanding what I'm trying to explain. When you are practicing meditation, and to be so forcefully clear, you always practice meditation, you never achieve it. You
Mm.
always practice these things, you don't achieve them, you don't have them, you don't keep them, you don't master them, you don't own them, you practice them. That's what you do. And you, if you practice them a lot, great, you're really good at practicing. And you
That's
practice
right.
so much, great. Now you can teach other people how to practice with you. But you, this idea of mastery or um, containment of what we're trying to explain doesn't really exist. And the more you study Jyotish, the less you know. That's absolutely true.
Correct. Absolutely.
You just
100%.
the longer you study, the more amateur you perceive yourself to be. But from a when we are teaching meditation or when we are practicing it and talking about the experience of practicing it, we remind each other that in the moment that you think that you are meditating, that is when you are not. So you may witness yourself starting to let go of, am I here, am I feeling, I've gotten out of my binary, and then the moment you realize it, you're back in it again.
Correct.
And it's this is the same thing. It's like if you are wondering if you're in union, maybe you just were, but now you're
Right?
not.
I heard a description of enlightenment of being like, if you're, when you're enlightened, you don't even know it because there's nothing wrong. You're just
Interesting.
so chilled out. You know what I mean? Not just chilled out, but like you can't, because you can't touch your own enlightenment because it's always present. It's always there, right? It's always right now. Atta yoga, right now, the first line of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Atta, now is yoga. That's it. Now, yoga. Now,
Yoga
that's
now.
it. Yoga now.
Yep.
be here now. Should I
Okay.
tell Shakti screaming before we sign off?
I think that would be a good way to end, and the purpose of telling this story would be to help us understand why, even though, and I'll put my quotes up, even though God loves us, even though everything is divine, why we suffer in our human form.
How everything can be
Oh,
absolutely perfect and also simultaneously completely fucked up at the same time, and really has to be. So, once upon a time, long, long ago, far, far away, Shiva was sitting in meditation up on Mount Kailash. And he sat in meditation for thousands and thousands of years. That was his jam. But see, Shiva is the encapsulation of all opposites. He is a celibate ascetic who does not have sex, and simultaneously he's married and has a lot of sex with his wife. He is worshipped as a erect phallus inside a yoni, but he's also celibate and has no sex. That's okay. It's union. He anything that you can say about Shiva, you can say the opposite and it's equally true, because he is union. So he's meditating for thousands and thousands of years, and his beautiful bride Shakti, she gets bored. So she's like, okay, I'm going to play hide and go seek. So she runs behind a big rock and she hides there. But see, Shiva's two main eyes are closed in his meditation, but his third eye at the center of his forehead, his ajna, is open. And so his third eye sees her behind his rock, because it's all behind the rock, because that's all seeing. It's omnipresent consciousness that's everywhere. And so she runs and she hides behind a tree, and his third eye follows her. And she's like, this isn't so much fun. Like, this is not a very lit up game of hide and go seek. So she very slowly creeps behind him, and she takes her shawl, her dupatta, and she throws it over his third eye. And at that moment, she experiences her own separation from Shiva, because you see, Shiva and Shakti are never separate. But at the moment that she covers his third eye, that third eye of all presence, of all seeing, she experiences herself as separate. And in that moment of sheer existential loneliness, because that is what separation is, it is a form of extreme loneliness, she begins to scream. And she screams, primal, just like screaming sound. And that creates all the earth of the entire universe. And she screams E, and that creates the waters. And she screams Ooh, and that creates the fire. And she screams I, and that creates the air. And she screams Ow, and that creates the ether. She creates all the five elements of the entire universe. And that scream is the primal scream, is the sound of Om. Om is the universe screaming itself into creation. And at that moment of, as her body, she's screaming, and her scream, the sound creates the universe, and that universe is herself, that she is creating herself, feeling separate and feeling extreme pain and longing for union back with the beloved, which we all experience, this desire for union or for wholeness, that we somehow feel our separation in any way that we might feel it, just because we feel like we're walking around these meat suits that feel separate from everything. We're only in this individuated consciousness. That's weird. That's really weird that we're walking around in these little meat suits and we're like, this is my experience, this is your experience. And that creates disjuncture. And at that moment of extreme separation and existential longing, she hears a reply back, not from outside of her, but from the heart of every single creature on every universe and every planet, from the heart of all the ants and the heart of all the birds and the hearts of all the whales and the hearts of all of the humans and all of the angels and all of the demons. She hears back the answer, Shivoham, be at peace, Shiva, peace. Shivoham, I am here. I am here with you, my love. We are not separate. I am here in the heart of all living beings. And then Shiva and Shakti come together and they say, okay, now let's really play. Now let's really play. And they dive together deep, deep, deep into creation, so deep that we cannot see their union. But in fact, Shiva and Shakti are in union, are not separate in the very fabric of every atom throughout the manifest universe. Aww. Aww.
So, fashion pig, movie pig, music pig. Wear whatever you want. No, I was gonna say the Sound of Om could be the music.
The Sound of Om is definitely music pick. Movie pick. There's this movie. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called The Fountain. But it is about death and love and loss and eternal return. And it's about a man chasing immortality across lifetimes, trying to keep his Shakti alive. And there's a tree of life, and there's cosmic space travel, and there's a pool of rebirth, and it's really crazy, and it's poetic, and it is it's a Shiva Shakti transmission, I think. So check out The Fountain.
Oh,
Not an easy watch, but really amazing.
I've got to throw Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we're low on time here. As for music, movie music. Oh, fashion too. You could listen to The Sound of Om. There are, I mean, every song. We're talking about everything that exists in our manifest reality, so you can really listen to whatever you want.
Correct.
But there are a lot of great references to union in popular music. And I think that there's something that comes through from the artist there. Like I'm thinking like ritual union, what et cetera, et cetera. That's one of my favorite songs actually. Okay, but fashion pick before we go. I think it's gender neutral.
Because of the union of Shiva Shakti?
I think it's just drape. It's like togas.
Toga.
Right?
Well, I mean,
I'm sorry. I'm not wrong, right? This is.
were togas gender neutral? I don't know enough about toga
I don't
fashion.
know. I just have this image in my mind. It's like a toga party where everyone just like wraps themselves in a sheet. It's like very like
It's undifferentiated.
undifferentiated.
But I don't know. Then I see like red cups and I get like frat boy vibes.
I mean, okay. Yeah. Maybe naked is the fashion pick.
I think it could be naked.
I think it's like skinny dipping to the underwater castle of divine
Of
union.
Shiva Shakti. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Right.
And I mean, we didn't even talk about the half Shiva, half Shakti incarnation that is completely gender neutral.
We did not. Its name
We
is
didn't. So we'll
Shakti.
we'll save that for next time on Third Eye Roll. Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you so much, Big, for tuning in today. We're so happy to have you with us, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
Om Namah Shivaya, Shrimatre Namaha.